This video is sponsored by Mubi. Get your 30-day free trial at mubi.com/thomasflight. This unassuming little moment is an example of what I think makes The Curse one of the most brilliant shows to air recently.
Oh, sorry. Are you in the middle of something?
No.
Okay.
And this line,
Something feels off.
from another moment in the show, holds the key to understanding both its brilliance and why it's so uncomfortable to watch.
I mean, it's edited well. But
Let me explain. In this scene, Dougie, a TV producer, has just shown Whitney the cut of their HGTV show they're working on together. She can't put her finger on exactly what doesn't feel right about it, but she knows something feels off. Her show doesn't feel like what she expects a reality TV show to feel like. The answer to why it doesn't feel that way lies in a few moments that happened earlier in the show.
We gotta film this, all right?
Absolutely not. No.
Come on, we're making a show about your life.
That's enough.
Okay,
That's
okay.
enough, Deputy.
Okay.
That's enough.
What Whitney is watching here is a reality TV show that doesn't alter reality to make it more dramatic or exploit real personal drama in order to make a truly engaging show by reality TV standards.
What we have here is a frictionless show. There's no conflict, there's no drama, and that's not something people want to watch.
So what do people want to watch?
We buy houses for cash, sight unseen.
Sold! You bought it!
This is Season 1, Episode 13 of HGTV's Flip or Flop, the show that perhaps most influenced The Curse's fake HGTV show. This episode starts like many others. Tarek and Christina are hanging out in their home, chatting about the latest slew of foreclosures. But then a hint of conflict, a little drama starts to creep in.
Okay, so honey, what are we saying? We're spending about $250,000 on it?
Are you sure you want to risk that much money? I mean, we've maxed out all our credit cards, we borrowed against our rental property. I don't know, it's just really scary.
Well, what's the worst that can happen?
We lose it all?
This isn't wild by reality TV show standards. You gotta have high stakes, but then on the way to the foreclosure auction, the couple starts to get into another argument about the maximum bid.
Don't go over.
What if it sells for $269,000 over $1,000? We're losing this house.
The max is $268,000. Are you listening?
Yeah, fine.
Seriously, you always do this.
You might wonder if they're playing this up for the camera or if this is real conflict. It feels pretty real to me, but either way, it's kind of weird. It begins to lend the show a sort of voyeuristic quality. With this kind of thing in the show, you're no longer just watching to see them make money flipping houses. Now viewers might be scrutinizing their relationship to see what's really going on. People apparently find this dynamic engaging because it's one of the most successful HGTV shows ever. By season 7, they were divorced, but still continued doing the show together for another 5 seasons. Shows like this are ruthlessly edited and constructed to be maximally engaging, dramatic, entertaining, and interesting. Flip or Flop, like many other unscripted shows, are not above manipulation and exploitation. Sometimes you can tell they're just making up a scenario to manufacture more drama for the show, and sometimes they're exploiting the drama of their own lives. But the weird thing about unscripted reality shows is that part of their conceit is that what you're seeing happen is real. Even though we all hopefully know by now that that's not the case, part of the fun of watching reality TV is the way the shows pretend that you're seeing reality when you watch them. Reality TV isn't actually showing you something that's necessarily more real than scripted TV. Reality TV is really just a specific type of stylistic realism. The brilliance of The Curse lies in part with how it plays directly against the reality TV style of realism. It doesn't just comment on how reality TV manipulates reality, but shows us how with the very way it's scripted and shot. Its exploration of reality and realism has implications for how we see ourselves and how we live our day-to-day lives.
Without further ado, smokers allowed.
When you become obsessed with creating realism, you create something fake. When you become obsessed with recreating reality, you create something hilarious.
That's the opening line of an essay writer, director, and actor Benny Safdie wrote about the show Nathan For You in CinemaScope magazine. Safdie, who at the time was working on his adrenaline-infused crime thriller Good Time, fell in love with Nathan For You, writing that he repeatedly had to pause the television so that he could cry from laughter.
I really felt a connection to what Nathan was doing on his show with regards to realism.
What particularly impressed Safdie, he calls it Nathan's masterpiece, was a season 3 episode titled Smokers Allowed.
Is it a loophole or?
Yeah, loophole.
What's the loophole?
Theater law?
In this episode of Nathan For You, Nathan is trying to help a struggling bar owner increase business by exploiting a legal loophole that allows indoor smoking as long as the smoker is part of a stage performance. Nathan, being the twisted genius that he is, sets up 2 chairs at the back of the bar, sells tickets, and the evening of non-actors just going about a normal night at the bar becomes a show. This is funny enough on its own, but the twist and where it really enthralled Safdie was where it goes from here.
Oh man, they were awesome.
Yeah,
They were awesome.
The 2 patrons of the show end up actually enjoying it, and the character of Nathan in the show believes he stumbled upon a hit play, but he misunderstands why the patrons actually enjoyed it. Instead of realizing the play was interesting because it was actually real, he thinks the audience must have enjoyed it because of the specific things that happened that night. He becomes obsessed with recreating the reality that was the first night of the performance. Safdie writes, Fielder, the character, is convinced it is not the concept that is successful, but the content. It's a study between actual reality and meticulous realism, in misunderstanding authenticity and performance. As Safdie wrote, when you become obsessed with recreating reality, you can create something hilarious. That line could easily be about The Curse, a show created by Safdie and Fielder together after they met and a friendship turned into a collaboration.
Let's do that again.
Like this sweater?
Yeah, it's exactly us.
In one scene, Asher and Whitney share a playfully funny moment together, and Whitney has the idea to recreate it for her Instagram.
Just exactly like that, okay?
Okay.
We struggle with the zipper.
When she does this, she makes the same mistake the character of Nathan did in Smokers Aloud. She thinks it's the content of the moment that other people will enjoy and attempts to recreate that reality for her Instagram, not understanding that what made the moment funny to her and Asher was the authenticity of it. On the surface, The Curse is a show about newly married real estate developers Asher and Whitney and their lonely alcoholic producer friend Dougie attempting to create an HGTV reality show with a focus on sustainability and having a positive impact in their community. Oh, and
I curse you.
Asher gets cursed.
Okay.
But to really understand what The Curse is doing, we need to understand its stylistic concept and what makes it so different from not just a reality show like Flip or Flop, but pretty much every scripted show out there as well. The Curse is not doing a parody of an HGTV show, although I wouldn't blame you if, like me, this is what you thought when you first started watching. It opens behind the scenes of the show Whitney and Asher are creating, and it's both painfully awkward and a bit darkly funny to watch as we realize the subjects of their show aren't performing gratitude for the camera in the way they would like for the show.
Mommy, happy. Son has a job, right?
There's conflict over how to proceed here. Whitney and Asher are uncomfortable forcing what they need out of the subjects in order to make an engaging show, while Dougie, always a master manipulator, is willing to do whatever it takes. After this scene, we go straight into a clip of the show they're making.
All my invisible homes are net zero structures.
And this might feel like parody, but parody is about deliberately exaggerating aspects of something for comedic effect. And if you've watched a decent amount of HGTV like I have at this point, researching this video, you know that this fake HGTV show isn't really an exaggeration. One of the things The Curse does is imagine fairly realistically what the behind-the-scenes dynamic might be in a situation like the one the real Christina and Tarek lived through. Instead of a parody, The Curse is doing something much stranger and I think ultimately more interesting here. It's actually doing a pretty sincere character study of a couple making an HGTV show. Yeah, The Curse is satirical, but it's showing fairly realistically how I think a couple could start out producing a show with certain ideals and then slowly get pulled into creating artifice and playing up drama or revealing their own drama for the sake of having a more interesting show because you want the show to succeed.
I wanted to be the guy with the long hair and the woman with the baby as a family. And they can be curious about the house, but not critical.
It shows how you might start out resistant to any kind of manipulation of reality or inclusion of personal conflict, but how these ideals might slowly get chipped away and compromised due to the pressure of just getting the show made and put on air.
I know that you have a vision that you want to spread around the world, right? But in order for that to happen, you need people to watch the show.
Whitney and Asher aren't supposed to be a direct representation of Tarek and Christina. Whit and Ash are updated for 2023, fictionalized and based on some of the other HGTV hosts as well, but I think they are written to be realistic. Their show's concept isn't absurd or ridiculous by HGTV standards, and Asher, Dougie, and Whitney aren't even that exaggerated as characters. Yeah, it's played up a little bit for comedic effect, but I think only slightly. I mean, have you noticed how absurd actual reality TV shows are? Or have you noticed how weird real people can be when you're not seeing them through the curated filter of PR and social media? These clips we see of Flipanthropy are pitch perfect. Fielder's experience in the unscripted TV world shines through, and they don't feel like imitations of a reality TV show. They feel like an actual reality TV show. But while they wanted to make the fake show on the show as real as possible, their stylistic concept for the curse itself was to create something that felt as far from anything else on TV as was reasonably possible. This is most immediately obvious just in the cinematography and the way the show is shot, but I think where the difference is actually most significant and impactful is in how scenes are constructed and edited. Where a show like Flip or Flop, or let's be honest, basically any show, tries to cut out everything that won't be interesting or dramatic or push the plot of the episode forward, Safdie and Fielder said, what if we made a show that focuses on those moments that would get cut out of every unscripted show or would never get scripted into a fictional show in the first place because it'd be too awkward or boring? Let me show you specifically what I mean and the way it impacts the story. There's an extended sequence from episode 4 that was one of my favorite parts of the show. Asher and Whitney are on a call with HGTV when the scene starts. The call goes on for a few minutes and then it ends. And then here, the scene just continues. Without any break in time or location, we go straight into what feels like another scene where Asher and Whitney are now talking about the call and its ramifications. This goes on for a few minutes, and then watch this.
So I bet we could ask way more for it. I'm gonna text Ed.
The show hits a second point where most scenes would end, but then it just keeps going. There's a long, awkward pause, and then another separate, unrelated conversation starts up. It's the kind of thing that happens all the time in real life, but which I've hardly ever seen depicted in a film or on TV. That conversation goes on for a while until it's interrupted by the doorbell. They go see who's at the door, and it's a neighbor. They have a conversation with the neighbor about something totally unrelated to what's been happening in the scene so far. And because of this conversation, Whitney decides to go talk to another of the neighbors. Here's how most shows would handle this moment.
We will handle this, Maria. I promise you. I'm so sorry this happened. Thank you again.
Oh, hey, Whitney. What's poppin'?
Hi, Vic.
Here's what actually happens on the curse. We follow Whitney as she gets ready to leave, walks outside, looks at her car, and then decides to walk to the neighbor. And yet again, the scene just keeps going. In real time, the show follows her on her walk. We're still in the same scene right now as the phone call 5 conversations earlier. The sequence continues as Whitney talks to the neighbor and then walks back home. It only occasionally cuts back to Asher in the house, but the whole time it's maintaining a sense that this is all happening in real time. The entire sequence is about 15 minutes long. Why do I think this is brilliant? For one thing, it's the exact opposite of reality TV show editing, which has to stitch together a narrative out of a ton of different disconnected moments. Instead, here we have one long moment with many different narratives playing out inside of it, which is much closer to how things happen in real life and acts as a kind of counterpoint to the reality TV show segments. But it's also brilliant because of what is revealed in these little in-between moments that would normally get cut out. When they get off the phone, because it doesn't cut to a new scene, we see how quickly Whitney's demeanor changes.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Did
you hear that stuff that she was saying about the displaced residents?
Which reveals how performative her excitement was. By leaving this awkward break in, we see how Whitney decides she's going to say something but has to work up the courage to mention it to Asher. It gives us some insight into the dynamics of their relationship and how she feels uncomfortable being totally honest with him. And when we follow her on her walk, it's kind of a profound moment because we've only experienced fragments of the location and the neighborhood as it's been talked about and seen on the show. But Whitney's love for Espanola and the community is a big plot point in the series. As we follow her on her walk, we begin to see the real community that lies just outside of the boundary of where she lives and what the show has shown us so far. We get to see the sense of connection that Whitney feels to the people and the place, but it also kind of highlights the somewhat absurd nature of where she's chosen to build these ridiculous invisible homes and how out of place they actually are within the rest of the neighborhood. This walk is something that any sane contemporary show would cut around or condense into a montage, but by playing things out in real time, The Curse expands our sense of the location as a real place and reveals more about the characters. Pacing and constructing the show this way acts as a kind of commentary on the way reality TV and regular scripted TV bends the structure of actual reality in order to make it more interesting, engaging, and entertaining. It's fine for our TV to be interesting and entertaining, but the way media manipulates reality starts to become a problem when it's so normalized to us that we forget it's happening. When we begin to confuse realism with something real, and when we interact with so much of the world and consume so many hours of media in our modern lives, we might start to feel that something is wrong with our own life because it doesn't feel like any of the media we consume. Realism is ultimately a stylistic attempt to make the way a piece of media manipulates reality invisible.
It looked like you were like holding the shirt back, so it looked fake, I think.
A recreation of reality isn't necessarily any more real, but it includes the parts of reality that media usually leaves out. The Curse leaves all the awkward stuff in, not just because it's a commentary on media, but because the dramatic core of the show is the characters' struggle to remove those things from how they perform themselves to the world. I think exploring this is significant and important because these same ideas apply to social media, podcasts, and news media. And these days, so much of our idea of the world and people and life comes from this media world that many of us spend hours a day inside. We're surrounded by media that carefully constructs an image of reality by curating what you see and what you don't see. And to grab and keep our attention, all of these media evolved as a matter of survival towards depicting the most interesting and attention-grabbing stuff. What is entertaining, dramatic, shocking, or funny. And if you don't want your viewers to click away and watch something else, you remove everything that would make it feel awkward, confusing, genuinely uncomfortable, or worst of all, boring. But here's the thing. A lot of life isn't dramatic or interesting or funny, at least not in the way we want it to be. A lot of life is boring and uncomfortable and awkward. That's not all life is, but that's normal, and it's a part of life that rarely gets depicted in media because of media's bias towards the things that will grab our attention. In a lot of ways, we like media because it's showing us the parts of life that aren't in our normal life. It's a concentrated form of all the parts of life that we like that we get to consume. We use media to escape the boring, uncomfortable parts of life, to not have to sit with ourselves and explore our own boring, annoying self-consciousness. The Curse includes and focuses on these things, which means it risks alienating some viewers. But I think this element is also what ends up making The Curse artistically compelling, because we stand to actually learn a lot from directing our gaze towards the parts of life that we want to cut out. But this isn't just highlighting how media shapes reality for us as the viewers. It's about how we all perform and shape our reality in both real life and through the media. And to really drive that point home, we have to see these characters' lives in the way they don't want us to see them. And yeah, it's easy to point fingers at reality TV producers and hosts. Most of us hopefully aren't as fake in our lives as Asher, Dougie, and Whitney are, but we all are to some extent and could all stand to examine that a little bit. When we see the truth of how a character really feels show up on their face Once they finally stop performing for the camera or the people around them and think they are no longer being watched, it holds a mirror up to how performative modern life can be.
I already have no responsibility, you know? It's like a freak accident. I happened to get hit.
There's a weird quirk in the character of Dougie that helps us understand what the show is saying about its characters. Dougie's backstory is that his wife was killed in a car accident while he was drunk driving.
And I was slightly over the limit. So everybody, of course, is like, oh, you were drunk.
He doesn't take any responsibility for the crash, but it clearly haunts him.
That's kind of all I think about, really.
Because of this, he has this habit of using a breathalyzer to check if he's over the legal limit, and he stops driving if he is. He's attempting to do the right thing here, but the way he goes about this reveals something about how all the show's lead characters interact with their own moral responsibility. Dougie seemingly doesn't want to drive drunk because that would be bad and wrong. But instead of just not doing it at all, he becomes obsessed with the specific rules. He just wants to be technically in the right. He's not worried about digging any deeper into whether his alcoholism in general is a problem and leading him to make poor decisions that put people in danger. He's just trying to make himself feel better by checking the somewhat arbitrary box of having a blood alcohol content of 0.07 instead of 0.08.
What, 078? I'm good.
Nice.
That's right.
On top of all this, he seems to only remember to use the breathalyzer once he's already driving. Instead of thinking things through ahead of time, he feels a pang of self-conscious guilt once he's already in the act, and then feels compelled to confirm whether or not he's right. This is the exact same pattern we see play out with Whitney and her show. She wants to do the right thing by not pushing locals out of their neighborhood through gentrification. She wants to make sure she's properly representing the local native culture in her show. But instead of making sure these things are solidly taken care of before she moves forward, she only starts really taking care of them once things are already in motion. And then once she does, she's really mostly interested in appeasing her own guilt by being able to check a box that reassures her that she's technically in the right.
That's whose validation I need to feel comfortable putting what we're doing on air.
She's ultimately interested in appearing like a good person, both to the people around her and to herself.
I'm not really sure what you want me to say.
I think you can just say, my homes are so unique and so important as a piece of art.
And as far as Asher goes, he's completely defined his sense of what is good by what Whitney wants him to do. All three of these characters, rather than grappling with the difficult and messy reality of their own moral responsibility for things, focus on doing what they think will make them look good to themselves, to a specific group of people, or to their partner. Cara Durand, the native performance artist in the show, is kind of a counterpoint to this. She becomes uncomfortable with the way Whitney buys into her own performativity.
Your homes are so unique and so important as a piece of art, and I couldn't be more proud to have my work displayed inside.
That is so sweet. That means so much to me.
And decides to opt out entirely. Okay, but what about the curse, you might be thinking? People want to know what the show is about, what the ending means, and there are a lot of theories. Some of them are better than others. Perhaps the curse has just finally caught up with him. Perhaps Whitney just wished he'd go away, and so he did, as he promised in the previous episode he would.
And if you didn't want to be with me, and I actually truly felt that, I'd be gone. You wouldn't have to say it. I would feel it, and I would disappear.
Yo, Asher! Ashman, how you doing? Exciting stuff, huh? Big day!
In many ways, though, I think how Asher is treated at the end is a reflection of how Asher and Whitney treat others throughout the show. Instead of slowing down, examining what's actually happening, really listening to Asher and asking him what would help him, Dougie and the firefighters barge forward with their idea of what will help. They throw Asher a net, but it's not actually to help, it's only as a symbolic gesture to get him to calm down while they continue with their own approach to helping him. This is the same way Whitney and Asher have been helping their community.
We wanted to know if you'd like to do security for the plaza for a little bit. Just while the stores are closed, just same rates, same hours.
Okay.
When they're met with a lack of enthusiasm from the people they're trying to help, instead of slowing down to see what the people they're trying to help really need, they barge ahead with their own idea of what is needed. I don't think The Curse is interesting because of a specific thing that happens in it, or because of a neat and tidy explanation for all the events that take place. It's interesting because it's a distorted reflection of our own reality. It's interesting because of the way the show shows us the parts of life that we desperately want to cut out. It's interesting because how different it feels from other media. Why does Asher get cursed and fly away at the end? I ultimately think the answer is right there in the show.
I just want to make a great show. I want to make a great show that people are going to watch.
The Curse still has to get your attention, keep it, and get people talking about it. It's still a show in the modern TV landscape.
You know, our show barely got picked up, right?
Really?
Yeah.
The show?
Yes.
When Asher flies up into the tree and Benny Safdie, one of the creators of the show, as Dougie, the creator of a fake show within the show, says,
"This is incredible."
He's right. It's just great TV. Fielder's other work exists within a kind of unresolvable paradox. It's always attempting to get at some kind of reality in an inherently fictional medium. And this show is no different. I think if The Curse accomplishes anything, it's to break the illusion of realism. Because how do you capture the reality that trying to capture reality inherently distorts it without making something absurd? One of my favorite movies from last year was Fallen Leaves, a Finnish film from director Aki Kaurismäki. Like The Curse, it also kind of revels in these tiny, awkward details of life. It finds poignant drama in the moments, sort of between the moments. It's very beautifully shot. It has a deadpan sense of humor and one of the best uses of music out of any film I saw last year, and I definitely recommend you check it out. Fallen Leaves is streaming now exclusively on Mubi in North America, the UK, Ireland, Latin America, India, and Turkey, and you can watch it for free when you sign up for a 30-day extended free trial of Mubi using my link, that's mubi.com/ThomasFlight. In addition to Fallen Leaves, they have a huge hand-curated library that they're always adding to. It's one of my favorite places to find and watch cinema on the internet. Click the link on the screen to check it out today. Go to mubi.com/ThomasFlight.